Welcome back to Miles Tales Prower Reads, Chapter 5, The Walking Dead Hope. I'm Miles Prower, a.k.a. Tails. Let's continue where we left off, shall we? They came here looking for shelter, he lied, eyeing Clementine. They will be staying with us for some time. All right, Gabe said, nodding. You gave them the briefing? He directed his question at Javi. I did, and they're more than happy to pull their own weight. That's good. I was actually about to suggest they head to the shooting range. Want to show them the way? Javi suggested. Sure thing, Javi. The young man nodded at Javi and stood up, beckoning the threesome to follow him. They said their goodbyes to the leader and silently walked out of the office. The hallway beyond was bustling with people by now, most of them not sparing a second glance for Clem and the rest. As they exited the building, Clementine walked beside Gabe at the front, and they began catching up. Louis walked next to AJ, a few paces behind, his eyes darting from Clementine to the people around them. Most of the buildings on this part of town had been restored to an extent. Kids played in the street. It was as though the apocalypse had completely skipped this part of the world. Louis thought, could this be a better alternative than a boarding school? His line of thought was cut short when Clementine laughed from ahead of him. Louis looked forward, catching Gabe's grin as the woman looked at him. Raising an eyebrow, he quickened his pace to be on par with them, AJ close behind him. He listened to their conversation, his eyes still on Gabe and on Clementine's right. They were reminiscing about the time they met, too engrossed to notice Louis's presence beside them. As he walked, he accidentally bumped into a woman who was walking in the opposite direction. He turned and apologized to her, helping her with a bushel of apples she dropped. When he grabbed the final one off the ground, he lifted his head. He was greeted with a smile from a woman in question. She wore a beige tank top with denim shorts to complement the coming weather. Her wavy black hair was tied back in a ponytail, and she had dark gray eyes. He nodded and said, I'm sorry, I didn't see where I was going. It's no problem, she assured him, taking the apples from his hand and placing them in the basket. Louis turned around and noticed the others had kept going without him. He cursed under his breath. Sorry, gotta run, he announced, leaving the woman standing in the middle of the street and catching up to his group. Minutes later, Gabe walked into the room with the legend range on it. Inside, rifles and handguns lined the walls ahead of them. Several small booths covered the width of the room. Gabe approached one of the handguns, and Louis heard a clicking noise. He handed a freckled man the weapon. Its barrel pointed at himself, and Louis took it. Sensing the tension between them, Clementine stepped up and took Louis's hand, leading him toward one of the booths. On the actual range, Louis could see a number of targets at several heights. Clem nodded at him and took out her own gun. All right, hold it like I taught you, she began, smiling when he followed her instructions. That's it, now the safety is right here. She pointed at a small button on the side of the firearm, and Louis hesitantly pressed it. Okay, what do I do now? He asked, glancing to his right at Clementine. First of all, remember, it's just a thing, she explained. Louis frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I don't know, she admitted, shrugging. Now take a deep breath and aim your crosshair at the target you want to hit. I'd say start with the lower ones first. Sure thing, he trailed off. Holding the gun in both hands, he lifted it up to the eye level, all too aware that AJ and Gabe were staring at him from behind. His hands shaking, he locked onto a cardboard silhouette that stood 20 feet from them. Taking a deep breath, he gently squeezed the trigger. He heard a distinctive bang and frowned when he saw a bullet hole about 2 feet above the target's head. Well, it's a good start, Clem complimented, patting him on the shoulder. Let's go again. He practiced for an hour, Clementine's advice cluttering his mind as he attempted to hit the targets. So far, he barely managed to hit 2 of them in the chest area. Not good enough, he told himself, preparing the next shot. He fired the final round of the clip and growled in frustration when yet another bullet hole adorned the wall behind the target. He was thankful that there was no one in the shooting range aside of the four of them, but he was getting tired of missing every shot. Okay, move aside, he heard Gabe's voice coming from behind him. The bearded man stepped up to his right, brandishing his own handgun. This is how you do it. Taking off the safety and cocking the gun in one swift motion, Gabe fired 5 consecutive shots. All 5 found their targets' heads. Show off, muttered Louis, crossing his arms. That was some nice shooting, Gabe, complimented Clementine, making him blush. Oh, thanks, he mumbled, scratching the back of his head, blinking a few times. He turned to Louis. Look, I can teach you properly if you're up for it. Before Louis could decline, Clem stepped up and smiled. That would be great, Gabe, she said, turning to Louis. She told him, honey, you should listen to him. He probably knows a lot more about the techniques than I do. And I'm very much out of practice. Plus, no offense, but you suck at this, Gabe added, earning a glare from both Louis and AJ. Sorry, but it's the truth. You can get better, of course. I know you can. All right, I guess it wouldn't hurt to try, admitted Louis, nodding. Let's begin. Over the next 3 weeks, Gabe and Louis met at a shooting range every morning. The former led the latter through different exercises to test his skills. Clementine tried to attend a couple of their sessions, but morning sickness would sometimes get too unbearable for her. She had convinced Javi during their first meeting to keep her condition a secret for the time being, so she would usually excuse herself by claiming she wanted to give AJ morning school lessons. She managed to drop by one of Gabe and Louis's training sessions one day, as AJ had been feeling under the weather and had asked to sleep in. She entered the range and was greeted by the sound of gunfire. At the boots, Louis held a handgun in both hands, his eyes set on a moving target about 30 feet from him. Gabe stood to the side, his hand behind his back. And this is where I will stop for part 2. Stay tuned for part 3 of Miles Tales Prower Reads, Chapter 5 of The Walking Dead, Hope.